Issues in remote APY lands. Let's have a look. Good evening, everyone. Florian Heise here, and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I've got my evening stein of coffee, and before I settle down to relax, probably play some computer games tonight, I thought we'd read through this article about some issues at APY Land. Now, I've spoken about this. If you're not familiar, APY Land in South Australia, and it's Anagu Pitjantjatjara Yak Yuntajara, and that's the best attempt I'm going to give, sorry guys, is a traditionally owned piece of land in the northwest of South Australia. It is a huge portion of land with several towns in it. And it's owned by the traditional owners, the Aboriginals. Now, it first came to my attention when I did a video back in February of this year where a town, the town of Mintabee, an opal mining town that existed before the land was given to the traditional owners, was being evicted. All the residents were being essentially evicted out of the town. So I did a video on it and I read through the report, and it's quite interesting what they're proposing to do with the mines. And there's also rumors of other natural resources that just happen to be discovered near the opal mines, because Mintabee is one of the few opal mine areas in Australia. You've got Coober Pedy and Mintabee, they're two big ones. And this is the type of area where people live underground. And then I was contacted by Stephanie Cairns, and she lived in Mintabee with her family, and she was kind enough to do an over 1 hour interview with me, just adding to their side of the story, because the report was rather one-sided. She gave photos and information about the town, and I did my best. This is an early interview I did in February as well, just to get a bit of an understanding of it and to see what it was like to live there as much as we can through an interview. And, it was fascinating, actually. I wanted to head off there. You can see, they had the school and it was shut down. It's quite sad. And I mean, this is an aerial image of where the town is. And it turns out they've all had to leave the town. They were essentially evicted out of the town. Now, they are currently launching a high court appeal. They launched, a federal court legal action, because they are being discriminated against, as they're not allowed to have access to the land due to this interesting thing, because of their race. So, I mean, this is, the APY land. I can't go on that land without a permit. There's a part of my own country, huge part of my country, not a private residence, but a whole portion of land that I can't even go on without a permit. But if I was Aboriginal, as a part of this tribe, I could, no problem. So, that doesn't quite sit well with me, to be honest. And I'll link to these 3 videos here. The first one I did where they're evicting the town, then the interview with Stephanie. I suggest you have a listen to hear their side of the story, what it was actually like, how the buildings are getting ransacked and just all the issues, and then the follow-up with the federal court action. And apparently the traditional owners are complaining about the federal court action. And the traditional owner, the guy looked like he was in his 20s. So that was my introduction to APY land and, some of the issues surrounding it. What's concerning is, in this report, which I covered in the first video, I went through the whole report where they recommend, what they could do with the land, what they could do. Either they could remediate the mine. And you're not talking a big population here. You're talking a couple of thousand that are living on APY land. And what employment opportunities are there? Hardly anything out there in the middle of nowhere. And you have an opal mine where you could earn a revenue, earn an income. I'm just thinking, why aren't the young men being encouraged to... I'm playing that video now, I don't want to play it. Why aren't the young men being encouraged to make use and learn a trade, learn a skill, become miners? But yes, so that's what brought it to my attention. So let's jump back here and have a look at this article, because there are issues here with the land and the way these Aboriginal lands are managed, and some of the issues coming out of them. It really is interesting to follow, because I suspect there are a lot of inefficiencies out there, shall we say. A lot of inefficiencies. Groot Island, what happened up in Northern Territory there. It was all set up, it was all good, and then boom, money disappeared. And what does it get spent on? And who misses out in the end? It's the locals. So let's have a read. Report recommends suspending APY Lands manager while investigation into the use of funding is underway. Aboriginal leaders on South Australia's remote APY Lands should consider suspending their manager, Richard King, while an investigation is carried out into the use of Commonwealth funding, an independent report has found. I mean, if they developed the mine, if they started mining it and turning it into something, creating a tourist industry, then they wouldn't need the Commonwealth funding. They could tell the Commonwealth to get stuff, build a town. That's my upbringing coming through, isn't it? my Germanic heritage. Let's not be dependent on the state. So, conciliator Jeremy Moore was appointed by Premier Stephen Marshall, who is responsible for Aboriginal affairs and reconciliation, following an application from 3 traditional owners of the APY lands in South Australia's north. The 3 men, former APY chairman Trevor Adamson and Frank Young, plus respected elder Murray George, asked for the conciliatory to hear their complaints over the daily conduct of APY General Manager Richard King. These complaints include Mr. King's decision to lodge a Supreme Court challenge against Mr. Adamson and the state's Ombudsman Wayne Lyons regarding an investigation into the functioning of the APY executive. Mr. King lost that appeal. Mr. Moore's new report noted the cost would fall on traditional owners and were likely to be significant. A funny thing is happening with regards to Dr. Peter Ridd at JCU, where JCU will appeal it, but where's the cost coming from? Essentially, it's from the university. It's not from the Vice-Chancellor, no one's personal pocket, where he has to fund his own defence personally, where it's essentially coming from the taxpayer's wallet. So yes, the APY lands are home to some of the highest levels of intergenerational disadvantage in Australia. Intergenerational disadvantage. That's an interesting term. I need to study it. I'd say, to put it more bluntly, they're home to people that are living in a part of the country where there's no opportunity. And what the hell can you do out there? What can you do? What work is out there? How could you better yourself? Would the young people even stay? They'd have to get away. There's no mining. Truancy would be terrible. What would it be like out there, guys? Have a listen to the interview that I did, and I'll link to it, to learn what it's like. Let's hear what it's actually like living in there. It all looks normal. It looks fun. She provided the pictures of her children and said I could use them. I made sure to ask permission. So, Mr. Marshall tabled the report in State Parliament today. It is the first time this type of direction has been made under the Land Rights Act. In my dealings with APY matters, I have consistently recognised that over recent years it has been the strongly stated view of members of this Parliament that those living on the land must be empowered to manage, use and control the land as complemented by the APY Act, Mr. Marshall said in a statement. Just think about that. Think about that. They have the land. But what freedom do they have to do with the land? What freedom do they have? What can they do as individuals there with the land? Can you get a mortgage on it? Can you own your own house? In some ways, I feel sorry for the people out there. They're trapped in this type of socialist organization, shall we say, community organization, a body corporate strata, messy bloody thing. Do you own anything? Where the biggest employer is the state. Accordingly, and as the conciliator has directed, arrangements are being made to enable the APY Executive Board to consider a response to the directions the conciliator has given to the board. Mr. King told the ABC left-wing people had been working to destabilise the APY executive for a long time, and despite Mr. Moore's report, he would see his contract through. I've been out there for 4 years now, and I'll continue to be out there for another 2 years until the end of this contract, Mr. King said. He criticised the decision by Mr. Marshall to hand the report to Parliament before it was considered by the APY executive. They should be afforded the right to actually deal with any issues the conciliator thinks he may have come across before it goes to Parliament, he said. No evidence court action was authorised. In his report, the conciliator noted there was no evidence that the elected board of the APY Lands had authorised Mr. King to lodge Supreme Court action. This was supported by evidence provided by the newly appointed chairwoman of the APY board, Sally Scales, he said. It appears that someone other than the executive board gave instructions to file the notice of appeal with obvious issues of resources and cost liabilities for APY, Mr. Moore said. That person, in my view, could only be the general manager or someone acting on his behalf. In my view, the board is not functioning appropriately because the general manager has been allowed to act outside his role and duties. Well, there you are. In his decision, Mr. Moore directed that the next meeting of elected Aboriginal traditional owners consider suspending Mr. King while there is an investigation into the use of Commonwealth funds by the APY executive. His report was finalised on August 12, with the next APY board meeting scheduled for September 23. Mr. Marshall said a copy of the report had been provided to Ms. Scales and the 3 applicants for the conciliation. So continued instability. Conciliation places the spotlight on APY, again, after almost a decade of instability in the management of the lands. Mr. King was first appointed as the general manager of the APY Lands in 2015, following a revolving door of general managers, with 8 appointed over the course of 5 years. 8 over the 5... What the hell? How? At the time, hostile traditional owners called for the state government to sack everyone and appoint an administrator to manage the area, some 105,000 square kilometres in the north of the state and home to 2,500 people. Mr. King was recently appointed to his role for a 3-year term. Reappointed. So, if someone could explain to me why one of the people living there isn't elected, you know, what's the representative there? Because this is all unincorporated territory in South Australia, I understand. It's all a bit funny. It's all a bit different. You know? It's strange. It really is. And I think these people are going to be stuck in this trap. I feel sorry for them. I really do. They're going to be stuck. They're going to be stuck. All the soil sipping lattes and lefty greenies in the city will feel happy that they're doing their part. And, you know, the average schmo out there, you reckon it'll improve that a lot? Let me know what you think in the comments. What about, here's an idea. What about we turn APY land into a special economic zone? You can have reduced taxation, 50% off taxation for businesses that are based out here. Yeah. Try and educate the local people. Why are we having telemarketing overseas? How much does it cost to run a wire out there? Get some fibre out there. Why not? Bloody hot, you probably wouldn't want to, but still. Why don't we look at ways to turn parts of our country? Maybe we should get some water there. Try and do a bit of farming. Oh wait, we've got a huge opal mine there. Maybe we do that. Maybe we do that. Maybe that's just my insensitive European thinking of taking advantage of the land or trying to better people's lives through advancements. No, we can't have that. Let me know what your suggestions are, guys. How would you deal with this? What do you think the approach is? Is it just going to be more and more of the same? I mean, that many people in such a short time going through. It'd be a nightmare. It would be a nightmare, I can imagine. Anyway, let me know what you think. Like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all again next time. Bye for now.